Hello and welcome to this fourth presentation on astronomy in the Bible. Today's topic is the New Testament. There are two stories outside of the Star of Bethlehem that astronomy plays a role in, determining when the crucifixion was, and the book of Revelation, a story in the stars. So just when was the crucifixion? Well, we know that it was a Good Friday, and the Passover was therefore on Thursday night. And we also know that Pontius Pilate was the Roman ruler over the area of Palestine. So let's put those pieces together. Well, Pontius Pilate is known to have been over Palestine for 10 years. So the crucifixion had to have occurred in one of these 10 years. We also know from Leviticus, in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at dusk is the Lord's Passover, and on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread unto the Lord. So we know the month is based on the lunar calendar. All right. Passover is going to be on Nisan the 15th. The months start on a new moon, and the 15th day is near a full moon. There are two dates within the reign of Pontius Pilate where we have a Friday right after Passover, April 7th, 30 AD, and April 3rd, 33 AD. These are only two dates that match within his reign. So we go back to the text, and we look for other clues. In the book of Matthew, it says, "Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over the land, until the 9th hour, a 3-hour darkness. The earth shook, and the rocks split," an earthquake. Luke 23:44, "It was now about the 6th hour, and darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour, for the sun stopped shining." In Mark, "At the 6th hour, darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour." Was it a solar eclipse? Some people like to think that it was, although there's some trouble with that idea. A solar eclipse only happens on a new moon. This is because for a solar eclipse to happen, the moon has to be in between the Earth and the Sun. During a full moon, the moon is on the other side of the Earth. In addition, a solar eclipse doesn't last very long. In 2017, the solar eclipse only lasted for 2.5 minutes. A long solar eclipse will only have darkness for 5 minutes at most. Furthermore, we look at solar eclipses in the same time frame. There are no solar eclipses that were visible in Israel. There were some in Africa and in the Indian Ocean, but not in Israel. So there must be another explanation for why the sun was not shining. Well, most likely, clouds. Clouds are the simplest explanation for how the sun can stop shining and darkness cover the land for 3 hours. Not terribly exciting, but a very common event and something that's easily understood and explainable. But there is more to this. In the book of Acts, there's a quote that says, talking about the crucifixion, "I will show wonders in heaven above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke." All right, so the earthquake. We do know from the Hebrew University, they did an archaeological study of when earthquakes occurred in the Palestine area. We have two that correspond to our two events. There is one in 30 in Jerusalem with slight damage. Another one in 33 where damage to the temple is recorded, consistent with what the Bible says. The book of Acts also goes on to say, "The sun will be turned to darkness, and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and glorious day of the Lord? Well, we've established that clouds can block out the sun and turn the land to darkness. But a blood moon, that's something different. A blood moon occurs on the full moon. This can happen because the Passover also corresponds to the full moon. And the day after, you can have a lunar eclipse. Now, a lunar eclipse is when the Earth's shadow covers part of the moon. And because of refraction, the color of the light changes, and the color of the light becomes red, giving you the appearance of a red moon. So what happens? As you see, we've had a fairly common event. In a short period of 2 years, we had 3 of them, and they do occur on holy days because the full moon does correspond to some of the holy days of the Jewish calendar. So let's look for lunar eclipses. Lunar eclipses are predictable, and we can run a computer program to determine when they occurred in the reign of Pontius Pilate, particularly from 30 AD through 33 AD, where the two dates we're looking for could be. And lo and behold, on April 3rd, 33 AD, there was a lunar eclipse. Well, all of the pieces are there. We have reason to believe that clouds could cover the sun, causing the darkness to be over the land for 3 hours. We have an earthquake that damaged the temple, and we have a lunar eclipse on the right day in April 3rd, 33 AD. Therefore, it is my contention that the crucifixion, Good Friday, occurred on April 3rd, 33 AD. The rest of the lesson focuses on the book of Revelation. In early times, most of the people were illiterate, and as such, the church invested heavily in art. Well, they also co-opted things that they found in pagan culture, and we know this from picking December 21st for Christmas to other things. But one of the things they did was they took their symbols from stars. Why? The Romans could never wipe them out. You can't take the stars away from people the way you can burn a picture or burn a church. So by picking symbols that people would recognize, they could make sure that those allusions and those stories could be told. When we look through, we see some of the symbols are fairly clear, if you're looking for them. In chapter 4, verse 3, talking about the throne room of God, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. If you look up at the northern sky, you will see the constellation Cassiopeia. In Greek mythology, Cassiopeia was the queen sitting on her throne in the story of Perseus and the Medusa. The symbol of a throne was co-opted. In the center, around the throne, were 4 living creatures. The 4 living creatures we now associate with the evangelists, the 4 Gospels and our writers in our Bible. Back then, the first living creature was like a lion, represented by the constellation Leo. The second, like an ox, represented by Taurus, the bull. The third had a face like a man, Aquarius, the water-bearer. The fourth was like a flying eagle, Scorpio, the scorpion. Now you might say that how in the world is an eagle and a scorpion the same thing? Well, it turns out that different cultures have different assignments for what those constellation shapes look like. It's like looking up at clouds and somebody sees a bunny, another person sees a snowman. Well, in different cultures they have different names for the constellations, and one of the early names for Scorpio was the eagle. So when we look at them, we associate man with Aquarius, Leo with the lion, bull with Taurus, and eagle with Scorpio. And they correspond to the evangelists Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, why would these symbols have been chosen? When you look at a map of the sky, you will see Scorpio in autumn, you will see Aquarius in winter, in spring you have Taurus, and in summer Leo. And you will notice that these constellations are opposite one another, so that they're each about 90 degrees apart. So anytime you look up into the sky, any time of year, one of these four symbols is going to be up there. And as such, every time you look up at the skies, one of the gospel writers, or the symbol for them, is looking down on you, sometimes two. That was meant for comfort, to let you know that you're always in the presence. The next part of the story comes in Revelation book 12, or chapter 12, the woman and the dragon. And it says here, a great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. Well, the most likely constellation is Virgo, the Virgin. The story is also a retelling of the birth narrative, referring to Mary. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. Let's see. And let's say 10 horns and 7 crowns on his head. His tail swept a third of the stars from the sky and flung them to the north, or to the earth. Okay. Well, thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for paying attention. I hope these lessons have been meaningful to you. I wish we were all together and we could be given these in person again, but I hope that this time has been enlightening for you as it was enjoyable for me. Thank you. Bye.